Hi everyone, it's Kristen. Welcome back for another video. I am so excited for this video today because it is the first of a series. This is going to be our beginner quilting series. So if you are brand new to quilting, you've never tried it before, or maybe you're just not sure where to start, what you're going to need, supplies, or the best pattern to begin with, that is why I am creating this series. So again, this is the first video in the series. So I'm going to be walking you through all the steps from start to finish over a series of videos. So I really hope that this video is helpful to you and that you enjoy it. So let's start at the very beginning with fabric. So one option would be to go to the fabric store and pick out a bunch of different coordinating fabrics to use and then buy a bit of each one, a quarter yard, half yard, that sort of a thing. To me, that is not the place to start if you are just beginning with quilting. So what I would recommend is that you start with something called a jelly roll, which is a roll like this, and there are so many to choose from. This particular one is by Lori Holt. It's called Hometown. So what this is 40, they're usually 40, yeah, 40 pieces of 2.5 inch strips. So they're 2.5 inches, I have one laying out right here, 2.5 inches by width of fabric. So they're the entire width of the fabric. And the beauty of these are that one, all the fabrics coordinate, so you don't have to worry about matching them up. Do these match? Do they go together? They all coordinate. And then thing number two is it minimizes the amount of cutting that you have to do. It also reduces the amount of patterns that you can use when you're getting something called, this is called a pre-cut, where it's already cut up for you. But I really think this is a great place to start as a beginner. So similar to this is a pre-cut called a charm pack. So this one, these are 5 inches. This particular one is, so they call it a stacker. So it's 42 pieces and they're 5-inch squares. And again, the fabric coordinates, it all goes beautifully together. It's already pre-cut for you. So you could use this to build a quilt of your choice. And then the other pre-cut option would be something like this, which is called a layer cake or a stacker. And this is a 10 inch. So this one has 42 pieces and they're 10 inches. And again, all the fabrics are beautiful and coordinating. It reduces the amount of cutting that you'll need to do. It's just a fantastic way to start. Some other things that you will need to get started would be batting. And I'll cover all that when we get to it. That's going to be in a separate video. You'll need fabric for the back of your project. And then binding fabric, which is that little bit that goes around the edge of the quilt that kind of finishes it off. But we're going to go over that in the upcoming videos. So for this series, I thought it would be great to start with a pretty simple quilt. So we are doing the Jelly Roll Jam Quilt by Fat Quarter Shop. So they have a free pattern on their website that you can download. I'll have it in the links down below in the description box. You can download that and follow along. So because we're doing a jelly roll quilt, you're gonna need a jelly roll. So you can just choose whichever one you would like. And the first step is going to be, we're gonna make 3 stacks with 6 strips each. Okay, so you'll just take your jelly roll apart and pick out 6 that you feel like go together. So if it were me, I would avoid 2 of the same pattern. Like this is both a crisscross pattern, so I would avoid that. And I would try to get a little bit of all the colors. So I feel like I need like a blue one. So here we go. Here's a blue like that. Maybe a darker blue like this. And so just lay it out how you think it looks best. And we're going to, let's see, so that's 6 right there. So I feel like that looks good. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So what I'm gonna do is just take this bottom piece, stack it on the next, and go just like this. Like that. And so now this is one set, and we're gonna do that 2 more times. Now, one thing that you want to do is mark the top of this. So you could do that by taking a sticky note and writing top on it and pinning it, or I just like to put a pin in like this. Just be careful that you don't poke yourself with it. And so this is gonna be important. You'll see why. But I'm just gonna set this one aside and then make my other 2 stacks. Once you have your 3 sets of 6 done, it's time to head over to the sewing machine and start sewing these pieces together. So what we're gonna do is take our top piece with the pin on it. Let me actually open this up like this, and the next piece in our stack, and we're gonna put them right sides together. And I like to try to line up the triangles if I can on that like pinked edge there, kind of line them up. We are gonna use a 1/4 inch seam allowance, 2.0 stitch length on this in a coordinating thread or just something neutral, light, white, dark, just depends on the color of your quilt, whatever you would like. I'm using Arfil thread. Make sure it's 100% cotton thread. You want that for the top stitch as well as in your bobbin. 100% cotton thread, super important. I'll have links to all of my favorite things in the description box down below. Thread, needles, you know, rotary cutters, everything that you see, I'll have it all linked for you just to make it easy. All right, so we go over to our sewing machine and we just sew a straight line all the way down the entire strip. And then we're gonna open our piece up once it's sewn that way, and then we're just gonna add our next piece. So right sides together, we grab our next piece and we line up the little triangles as best we can, and we do 1/4 inch. So we're gonna do that for all 6 of these pieces till we have one big long piece. And we're just gonna do our 1/4 inch seam all the way down. You can pin it if you need to, but I don't really see the need. I just kind of adjust the fabric as I go. Also, I'm using a 1/4 inch piecing foot, which makes this process a lot easier. I highly recommend it, especially if you are a beginner. I will have that linked in the description box down below. It's very inexpensive from Amazon and is extremely helpful. So if I notice the pieces start becoming misaligned, like if it starts to shift like this, I'll just tuck it back in and then hold on to it down here and then go. So once you're done with that first, we're gonna open it up here and grab the next strip from our pile, and right sides facing together. We're just gonna keep adding to this until all 6 of our strips are connected. All right, so once you have all 6 pieces sewn together, we are leaving the pin in the top piece. That's gonna tell us which way to press our seams, and it's gonna be useful in a few different ways. So this is what all 3 of your sets should look like, nice long sets. So from here, what we want to do is press our seams away from the top. So this is where my pin is. So I'm going to press my seams this direction. So you're gonna do that all the way down your strips, all 3 of them. And then we're gonna come back and we're going to do some cutting. And we're gonna start putting our blocks together. It all comes together really, really quickly. So I'm gonna head over to the iron and get this all pressed, and then we'll meet back here and start doing our cutting. All right, so we have our strip sets done. Isn't this such a pretty fabric? I just love it. We still have our pins marking the top piece. Again, that's gonna come in handy in a little bit. So the next step, so we pressed the seams, and the next step is going to be to start cutting the parts of our block. So for that, you're gonna need a like self-healing mat. You will need a rotary cutter and then some sort of ruler. I like the Creative Grids rulers because they have these little grippies on the back. It's just a personal preference. So let me get 2 of these out of the way. So from each of our strips, we're going to cut 6 6.5 inch blocks. And they're gonna be 12.5 inches long. That's the size of our strip. So 6 6.5 inch blocks. So the first thing I'm gonna do is just cut this selvage off and get a nice straight edge. So I'm gonna line my ruler up and slide it over a little bit. I just wanna cut that selvage edge off and give me a nice straight line to work with. So I'm just gonna press down on my ruler, trying to keep everything in place while I go. All right, so now I have a nice straight line to work with. I'm gonna take this pin out while I'm cutting this and I'm gonna put it back in. That's the pin that tells me that this is the top. So we're doing 6.5. So here we go with our first cut for our 6.5 inches. Just like that, beautiful. And I'm just gonna repeat this until I have 6 cut out of each of my strip sets. All right, so once you have all of your strips cut into the 6 sections, it's time to go ahead and start actually pairing these up and creating our blocks. At this point, you should still have the pins marking the tops, and I have just made 3 piles with all of the matching, pieces in each pile. All right, so it's time to start putting our pieces together. What I like to do is I'm gonna mark each of my piles. Pile 1, pile 2, and pile 3. And that's gonna help us to start piecing them together correctly. So the first thing I'm gonna do is put 1 piece from my pile 1 and 1 piece from pile 2 together. Now, this is where I'm paying attention to which one's the top. So this is the top here, this is the top here, and I want them to be opposite. So I want the tops to be opposite of each other. And this is going to require that the seams nest. So what that means is that basically you'll want the seams to line up so you get a nice corner and a nice line in the quilt. And the way that you do that, so there are a couple things that help with nesting seams. One of them is having your seams going opposite directions. So if you remember, we pushed all of them down away from the top. So that means when we piece them together, one side is going this direction, and if you flip, then the other side is going that direction. That's gonna help our seams to nest. The other thing that's gonna help is pins, lots of pins. So nesting seams is basically where you just line your seams up so they kind of lock in with each other. I don't know if you can see that on the video, but you want them to kind of lock together. You'll see what that, you'll see what I mean if you're actually doing it. It's kind of hard to explain until you do it, and you'll understand what I mean by locked in together. And then I just pin at each intersection. I nest it together and pin just to make sure that these stay in place while we're sewing. They don't have to be perfect, and if your seams don't nest and you're just starting out, it's not a big deal. No one's really gonna notice except for you. So just do the best that you can, but if they don't nest perfectly when you go in, once you're done sewing them, it's not that big of a deal. And definitely something that takes some practice, for sure. I'm still working on it myself. I definitely still have times where it just doesn't come together like I want it to. So anyway, here we go. We have all of them pinned. So all the seams are pinned. They're nested together and pinned. So the next step is just going to be to use a 1/4 inch seam allowance and go all the way down this side that we pinned. taking the pins out as you go along, of course. We're just gonna repeat that process as we piece together all of these blocks. The instructions are in the download that I linked in the description box down below that tell you to pair the 2 and 3 together and the 1 and 3 together and all of that. So follow those directions, get all your pieces sewn with the seams nesting together, and then I'll meet you back here to put our quilt together. All right, I'm gonna try to show you what a nested seam looks like. So here are 2 pieces, and then you just want them to kind of lock together, just like that. Can you see that? Hopefully you can kind of see. And then you pin to keep that in place so it doesn't move. Same thing for this one. See if I just kind of pulled this the way it wants to go. Can you see how it's not quite, they're not quite lined up? So I need to just adjust. It's easier to do flat and kind of press those seams in together and get them to line up just so. All right, I am going to use 2.0 stitch length and my 1/4 inch piecing foot, which I love. I can't quilt without it. I have to have it. And we're just doing simple straight stitch all the way down. Of course, you want to take the pins out as you go. And as you take out the pins, just make sure that your seam doesn't shift. Just make sure it's still locked together. And if it does shift, just use your fingers to get it back to where you need it to be and send it through. I'm just going to chain piece all of these together, which means that I'm not going to cut my thread and pull this out and restart. I'm just going to leave it on there and go ahead and place my next piece. It will save you some thread and time as well. Chain piecing is what that's called. All right, we have all of our pieces sewn together. So this is what the blocks should look like at this point. So this is block A, and I have them still separated. So I have 3 block A's, 3 block C's, and on like that. I do like to, it's a good idea to iron pretty much every time you sew a seam. So I'm going to use my iron and I'm going to set the seam first, which just means we are pressing and kind of locking that stitch in place. And then at this point, I would recommend pressing the seams open. So we're going to start down at this end, make sure everything's nice and flat, and just open that seam up just like that, and then start pressing with the iron. So make sure that everything's kind of pulled taut. You don't want to stretch the fabric, but you want to make sure that everything is pulled taut so you don't get any pleats in the fabric. And I just press just like that. And this is what it will look like. So I'm going to do that with all of the blocks. All right, we have our seams pressed open. I still have my stacks labeled. We need to keep them labeled A, B, C. It will help us to be able to lay out our final quilt top in the right way. But before we move on to the next step where we actually put together our quilt top, we do need to go through and make sure that each block is squared up. So I'm just gonna go through and square everything up with my rotary cutter and my ruler. because this will help our finished product to be better. Everything's nice and straight. All right, we have squared up our blocks. So now it's time to actually start laying them out in the way that they will be laid out for the quilt. So that's why we have everything labeled. So according to the directions, we're doing an A, and then we're doing a B. And instead of lining them up to match like this horizontal, we're gonna flip it. So it's like that. And then we're going to do our C piece. Just like that. So then we're gonna sew these together. You can pin them if you need to, but we won't have nested seams here, so you don't have to worry about that. I'll just put a couple clips on there to keep it in place. And then same thing for this side, right sides together, just like that. And then pin that or clip that in place. And then we'll sew it together, 1/4 inch seam, just like we've been doing all along. All right, so here's our first row done. We sewed those 1/4 inch seams down the side. I'm gonna take this over and set my seams first, and then I'm going to, again, press the seams open, these 2 seams. And then we're gonna continue this. We're gonna do our second row, which the second row is CAB, and then the last row is BCA. And then we're gonna connect them all together and our quilt top will be done. All right, we are in the final stretch of getting our quilt top put together. So the last part is going to be piecing our rows together. So I still have mine marked. So I have row number 1 and row number 2 and row number 3. So this part is going to be so simple. We're just putting them right sides together, and you can pin or you can clip, whatever you want to do. So we're going to sew 1/4 inch seam down this line to put rows 2 and 3 together. And then to get rows 1 and 2 together, we're going to do the exact same thing. I'm going to take these out because I do not need them anymore. Okay, so 1 and 2 going together, right sides together like this. I'll put some clips in to hold it in place. Just like that. And we're gonna get our last bit of sewing done. All right, we finished the quilt top. Wasn't that so fun and easy to do? I just love these colors. So excited to see the finished quilt. But that is your first video in the series for quilting for beginners. So this is our quilt top. Our next step is going to be to put our backing and our batting on. So the next video is going to be talking all about that and how to baste your quilt, which is basically where you create the quilt sandwich, where you have your batting and your backing, then your batting, and then your quilt top. And we're gonna get it all pieced together to prep it for the actual quilting. Which I am going to be showing you how to do on just your home sewing machine, just a real simple pattern for this quilt. It's just good for beginners to keep things simple. And then from there, we'll move on to the binding video, which is where you add your final little finishing touch all around the edging of the quilt, and then it will be done. So the plan is for this to be a 3-part series. I hope you'll stick around for it. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. I'm always down in the comments answering questions and things like that for you guys. So definitely leave any questions or comments and things in the comment section down below. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the rest of the videos in this. I have a lot more quilting tutorials and things coming up soon. I hope you'll stick around for those. Thank you so much for watching this video today, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.